Pacific. Dawn broke over Coronado like molten copper spilling across the training grounds
We
of
need
the
to
Naval
adjust our
Special
approach.
Warfare Center.
The conditions are changing
Salt air
faster than
mixed
we
with a sharp
anticipated.
bite of determination as 60 SEAL candidates gathered on the beach, their breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. It was 0600 hours on a Monday that would shatter everything. Elena Ashford stood at the head of the formation, her compact 5'3" frame silhouetted against the
Move
rising
in!
sun.
Flank right!
Red
Push
hair pulled
forward!
back,
Take the
and a
position!
regulation bun, green eyes, scanning the rows of exhausted men before her. At 26, she looked more like a college athlete than someone who'd survived 2 combat deployments and carried shrapnel in her left shoulder that still ached when the weather changed. That underestimation was her advantage, always had been. Obstacle course, she called out, her voice carrying that particular quality of command that comes not from volume, but from absolute certainty. Full gear, 15 minutes. Anyone slower than that runs it again. A few candidates exchanged glances. The standard time was 18 minutes. She was pushing them, testing them the way her father had pushed every SEAL who'd passed through his hands during 30 years of service. Rear Admiral Declan Ashford had been a legend. SEAL Team 2, Gulf War hero. The man who'd written half the close quarters combat manual still used today. Cancer had taken him in 2020, but his legacy lived in every corner of this base, and most powerfully in the daughter he'd trained from the age of 8. The candidates moved out, boots pounding sand. Elena watched them attack the first obstacle, a 30-foot cargo net that swayed treacherously in the ocean breeze. This was her world now. After the shrapnel wound in Syria had ended her intelligence career at 24, teaching had seemed like a consolation prize. She'd discovered it was something more, something essential. Still pushing them hard, I see. The voice came from behind her, warm with approval and age. Captain Dutch Vandenberg, 67 years old and retired for 7 years, but still carrying himself like the SEAL instructor he'd been for 4 decades. Silver hair cropped, military short weathered face, creased with smile lines earned from training 3 generations of warriors. Blue eyes that missed nothing. Dutch? Elena's formal bearing softened slightly. Didn't expect you this early. Couldn't sleep. Vandenberg moved to stand beside her, his eyes tracking the candidates with the automatic assessment of a lifelong teacher. Kept thinking about your dad. 5 years ago yesterday, he pinned on his Admiral stars. Seems like last week. They stood in silence for a moment watching a candidate struggle with the rope climb. The young man's arms trembled, his grip failing. He fell at the sand, immediately jumped up to try again. That one's got a heart, Vandenberg observed. Heart's not enough. He's using his arms instead of his legs. Elena's voice carried the certainty of someone who'd lived this lesson. Ashford method says lock your feet, drive with your hips. Let the big muscles do the work. Vandenberg smiled slightly. I remember when Declan first showed me that technique. 1982, I think. Turned to conventional rope climbing on its head.
Cut training injuries by 40%. Elena watched the candidate try again, this time adjusting his technique. He made it halfway up before fatigue claimed him. Better, learning. The sun climbed higher. Candidates attacked obstacles with the particular desperation of men who knew that failure here meant no second chances, no SEAL tried none, no place in the Brotherhood they'd sacrificed everything to join. The Rangers are coming today. Vandenberg said, his tone shifting. Joint training program. Lieutenant Commander Cole asked me to observe. I know. 1,400 hours.
Elena kept her eyes on the course, but something in her voice tightened. 75th Regiment, fresh from Afghanistan. Some of them are going to have attitudes. Old school thinking. Vandenberg chose his words carefully. Just watch yourself, Elena. I know the type. I've dealt with worse than attitudes, Dutch. I know you have. He paused, then added quietly, but your dad isn't here anymore to back you up. Elena turned to face him fully. In the morning light, she could see the concern etched in his features, the protective instinct that had made him drive from his home in La Jolla at dawn to deliver this warning. I don't need him to back me up, she said softly. He taught me to back myself up. Vandenberg's expression shifted to something like pride mixed with old grief. He did at that. A whistle cut the air. The first candidate had finished the course. 14 minutes, 40 seconds. Elena checked her stopwatch and nodded approval. I'll be fine, she told Vandenberg. It's just a training demonstration. But the old SEAL instructor had learned to trust his instincts over 40 years of combat and teaching. Something about today felt off. He couldn't name it, couldn't point to a specific reason. Just a tightness in his chest. A whisper of warning his younger self would have called superstition, and his current self knew better than to ignore. I'll be in the observation room this afternoon, he said, just in case. The candidates were finishing now, most making the time, a few falling short, and turning around to run it again without being told. Good discipline. Elena made mental notes on each one. These weren't just bodies to push through training. Each was someone's son, someone's husband, someone's brother. Each would go into harm's way, relying on what she taught them. Dismissed, she called out. Breakfast then, combat water survival at 0900. Don't be late. The candidates dispersed, some limping, all exhausted, but wearing the particular expression of men who'd been tested and passed. The office Elena occupied was small, but functional. Gray walls, government-issued desk filing cabinets containing training records and medical certifications. But on one wall, carefully arranged, hung the evidence of a life lived in service. A Bronze Star earned in Fallujah in 2019, when she'd led a team that extracted 3 wounded Marines under heavy fire, 23 years old, and already proving that the Admiral's daughter was more than just a famous name. A Purple Heart, the physical reminder of the shrapnel that had torn through her left shoulder in Syria in 2020, ending her field career at 24. She could still feel the impact sometimes, the way the world had tilted, the blood that had come too fast, the knowledge that her war was over before it had truly begun. A photograph of her father in his dress whites, taken the day he made Admiral. His chest decorated with ribbons representing 3 decades of classified operations and unclassified heroism. The pride in his eyes that day had made her believe she could accomplish anything. And in the center, in a small shadow box, the item she treasured most, her father's dog tags. Worn thin from years against his chest, handed to her by the Navy chaplain the day after cancer finally claimed the toughest man she'd ever known. She didn't usually allow herself to look at them during work hours. Emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford when candidates needed her to be harder than granite. But this morning, with Dutch's warning echoing in her mind, and the Rangers arriving in 8 hours, she permitted herself a moment. "Miss you, Dad," she whispered to the photograph. A knock at the door pulled her back to the present. "Come in." Lieutenant Commander Barrett Cole entered a folder tucked under his arm. 42, lean and weathered, with the particular intensity of men who'd spent their careers in special operations. He respected Elena in a way some officers didn't, perhaps because he'd served under her father in 2008, perhaps because he was smart enough to recognize competence, regardless of gender. "Morning, Ashford. Good session today. Solid. 3 candidates are borderline on the rope climb, but they're improving. I'll work with them individually this week." Cole nodded, set the folder on her desk. "The Rangers arrive at 1400 hours. Staff Sergeant Travis Rutledge is leading the group. 5 men total. They're here for 3 weeks of joint training." Something in Cole's voice made Elena look up sharply. 3 weeks was unusual. Standard joint training was 2 days maximum. 3 weeks, higher command wants extended interoperability assessment. New protocol. Cole's expression suggested he didn't believe his own words. But there's something else you need to know. Rutledge has a reputation. What kind of reputation? Good operator, 4 deployments to Afghanistan, decorated, but he's old school in ways that aren't always professional. The kind that involve women. There have been complaints, sexual harassment, unwanted advances, nothing that stuck, but smoke usually means fire. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd encountered men like that before, men who saw women in uniform as targets rather than fellow warriors. What else should I know? Cole's expression turned grim. His father is Brigadier General Marcus Rutledge at JSOC. Things get swept under rugs. 3 female Marines filed complaints over the last 4 years. 1 transferred to a desk job. 2 left the service entirely. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elena had heard stories like this too many times. Good women, driven out because the system protected the wrong people. "You're scheduled to run the hand-to-hand demonstration this afternoon. Vandenberg requested to observe." I approved it. After Cole left, Elena opened the folder. Inside were the standard personnel files for the 5 Rangers. She flipped to Rutledge's page and studied the photograph. 32 years old, 6'2", 215 pounds. Square jaw, cold eyes behind the professional military bearing. The kind of smile that didn't reach past his lips. Combat action badge, Bronze Star with Valor, Army Commendation Medal, an impressive record that said absolutely nothing about character. She memorized his face, then closed the folder and locked it in her desk. The morning passed in the familiar rhythm of training. Combat water survival at 0900, where candidates learned to operate in Pacific swells while carrying full gear. Weapons maintenance at 1100. Lunch at 1200. Through it all, Elena maintained her professional mask, pushing the candidates, correcting techniques, building the mental and physical hardness they'd need when bullets started flying. At 1330 hours, she changed into a fresh training uniform and made her way to the hand-to-hand combat facility. The building was relatively new, funded by a grant that bore her father's name. Inside, blue mats covered the floor of a space the size of a basketball court. Mirrors lined one wall. The other 3 walls displayed photographs of SEAL combat techniques, many demonstrated by Declan Ashford himself. Vandenberg was already there, sitting in the observation gallery with Cole and 2 other senior instructors. He gave her a subtle nod. At precisely 1400 hours, the Rangers arrived. Elena heard them before she saw them. The particular sound of combat boots on concrete. The easy laughter of men comfortable in their own dominance. They came through this door in a loose group, and she assessed them in the span of seconds. 5 men, all large, all fit, all wearing the particular swagger that came from being Army Rangers. Elite infantry, men who'd earned their place through some of the toughest training the military offered. But her eyes went immediately to the one in front. Travis Rutledge was bigger than his photograph suggested. Not just tall, but broad, with shoulders that strained the fabric of his uniform. Blonde hair cut high and tight. A tattoo creeping up his neck that shouldn't have been visible in regulation uniform. Eyes that swept the room and landed on her with an expression she recognized immediately. Dismissal. Contempt. Predatory interest. Gentlemen, Cole stood from the observation gallery, his voice carrying across the space. Welcome to the Naval Special Warfare Center. This is Instructor Ashford. She'll be running today's hand-to-hand combat demonstration. One of the Rangers, a corporal with a thin face and nervous energy, whispered something to Rutledge. Rutledge's smile widened. Ma'am? Rutledge's voice was deep with a slight southern drawl. I'm Staff Sergeant Travis Rutledge. We appreciate the Navy's hospitality. Professional, polite, but his eyes told a different story. They moved over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Assessing, measuring, finding her wanting in some fundamental way that had nothing to do with military capability. Elena nodded, keeping her voice neutral. Sergeant, welcome. Today we'll be covering close quarters defensive techniques, specifically the Ashford method of threat neutralization. This system was developed over 30 years and has been proven in combat environments, from Grenada to Mosul. Ashford method. Another Ranger, stocky and barrel-chested, raised an eyebrow. Like your name, my father developed it. Rear Admiral Declan Ashford. Some of you may have heard of him. Recognition flickered across several faces. In the special operations community, Ashford was a name that commanded respect. But Rutledge's expression didn't change. We've done hand-to-hand, he said casually. Army Combatives program. Pretty comprehensive. I'm familiar with it. Good foundation. Elena moved to the center of the mat, her movements economical professional. But the Ashford method focuses on practical application against larger, stronger opponents. Efficiency over strength, leverage over power. Theoretical or tested? Rutledge asked, still wearing that smile that wasn't quite a smile. Combat tested. Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan. Multiple engagements. Elena paused, met his eyes directly. I need a volunteer for demonstration purposes. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. She could feel the tension building, the unspoken challenge hanging in the air like smoke. Then Rutledge stepped forward. I'll volunteer, ma'am, if you don't mind. In the observation gallery, Vandenberg tensed. Cole leaned forward slightly. They both recognized what was happening. Rutledge was testing her, challenging her. Not overtly enough to be called out, but clearly enough that everyone in the room understood. Not at all, Sergeant. Please step onto the mat. Rutledge moved with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a physical confrontation. He was 9 inches taller than Elena, outweighed her by at least 85 pounds, and radiated the particular arrogance of someone convinced of their own superiority. Rules, he asked. Tap if you need to stop. I'll demonstrate at half speed, first, then full speed. Ready? Ready, ma'am? Elena assumed a neutral stance. Hands at her sides. Voice calm and instructional. Standard scenario. Aggressor attempts a front grab with intent to control. Defender responds with Ashford Method Technique 17. Watch the sequence. She moved at half speed, her hands coming up to demonstrate the motion. Rutledge played along, reaching for her shoulders. She showed the hand placement, the pivot, the angle of leverage that turned the attacker's strength into their weakness. See how the defender uses the attacker's momentum, not fighting force with force, redirecting it. She reset to neutral position. Now full speed. Sergeant, whenever you're ready. Rutledge's smile turned predatory. You sure, ma'am, I don't want to hurt you? You won't. Something flickered in his eyes. Anger maybe at her certainty. He reached for her, fast and hard, trying to grab her shoulders and demonstrate his dominance in front of his men and the Navy instructors. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. Elena's hands moved with the precision her father had drilled into her through 10,000 repetitions. She caught Rutledge's right wrist with her left hand, stepped inside his reach, used his own momentum to pull him off balance. Her right hand found the pressure point at the base of his thumb, applying exactly the right amount of force. She pivoted, used her hips as a fulcrum, and suddenly, Rutledge's arm was twisted behind his back at an angle that sent lightning up his shoulder. He gasped, tried to muscle out of it, discovered that any movement increased the pain exponentially. His face went red, then white. He dropped to one knee. "Tap," Elena said quietly without emotion. Rutledge tapped twice against his own leg. She released him immediately, stepped back, offered a hand to help him up. He ignored it, stood on his own, rubbed his shoulder. The other Rangers were silent, eyes wide. In the observation gallery, Vandenberg allowed himself the smallest smile. "That's Ashford Method Technique 17, Elena continued, as if nothing significant had happened. "Effective against opponents of any size. The key is timing and leverage, not strength. Who wants to try it next?" The rest of the afternoon passed in a careful dance of professionalism. Elena taught. The Rangers learned. And Rutledge maintained a veneer of courtesy that didn't quite hide the rage simmering beneath. She'd humiliated him, in front of his men, in front of Navy brass, and men like Travis Rutledge didn't forget humiliation. At 16:30 hours, Cole dismissed the Rangers. They filed out several offering genuine thanks for the instruction. Rutledge was last pausing at the door to look back at Elena. "Interesting technique, ma'am," he said. His voice was pleasant. His eyes were ice. "Lot different from what we use. Different branches, different approaches." "Right." His smile was a blade. "Maybe we can compare notes sometime. Off duty. I keep my professional and personal life separate, Sergeant." "Of course. Professional." He lingered a moment longer, then followed his men out. As soon as the door closed, Vandenberg was down from the gallery and at Elena's side. "Be careful around that one, Elena," he said quietly. "I know the type. 3 weeks is a long time for him to build resentment. He volunteered. I demonstrated a technique. That's my job." Cole joined them, his expression troubled. "Dutch is right. 3 weeks gives him time. Time to plan. Time to wait for an opportunity. Watch your back." "I'm always careful." Elena locked to the equipment cabinet. "I appreciate the concern, but I can handle Travis Rutledge." After they left, Elena stood alone in the training facility, looking at the photographs. On the wall, her father demonstrating a knife defense, her father teaching a joint manipulation, her father looking directly at the camera, his expression serious, the weight of responsibility clear in his eyes. "I know, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "I felt it too, but some battles you can't avoid. You taught me that." Evening in Coronado meant golden light slanting across the naval base, palm trees casting long shadows, the Pacific turning from blue to copper as the sun descended toward the horizon. Elena finished her paperwork at 1900 hours, later than intended but necessary. Training reports, injury logs, equipment maintenance requests, the bureaucratic side of instruction that never appeared in the recruitment videos. Her phone buzzed, a text from Vandenberg. "Dinner tomorrow, my treat." She smiled despite herself, typed back, "The Shack, 0700, breakfast instead, you're up anyway. Deal, the donut bar, don't be late." Elena gathered her things, locked her office, and made her way to the parking lot. Her vehicle was a Ford F-150 Raptor Midnight Blue, with aftermarket upgrades for off-road capability. It had been her father's, his retirement gift to himself, handed down to her in his will, along with his dog tags and his legacy. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour. Most personnel had left by 1700. A few lights burned in distant buildings where duty officers maintained their watch. The sound of the ocean was clear, waves breaking against the shore beyond the fence line. Elena was halfway to her truck when she heard the footsteps. Not the measured stride of security patrol. Something heavier. Multiple people. And they were behind her, closing distance. She didn't turn around, didn't speed up, just kept walking, her right hand moving casually to her hip where a small canister of pepper spray rode on her belt. Military bases were safe, but she was her father's daughter, always prepared. "Hey, PT Barbie." The voice was deliberately loud, slurred with alcohol. Elena's stomach tightened. She recognized that voice. She turned slowly. 30 feet away, Travis Rutledge stood with 2 of his Rangers, the corporal with the thin-faced Jensen, and a specialist named Wolf Stocky with hard eyes. All 3 had clearly been drinking. She could smell the beer from here. "Sergeant Rutledge." Her voice was level professional, giving nothing away. Can I help you with something? Rutledge swaggered forward, his men flanking him in the unconscious tactical positioning of trained soldiers. We were just leaving the base. Saw you walking? Thought we'd say hi. Hi. Elena's hand stayed near her pepper spray. It's late. You gentlemen should get back to your barracks. That's the thing. Rutledge kept coming, closing the distance to 20 feet, then 15. We wanted to talk about today. That little demonstration. The training went well. I'll submit a report to Lieutenant Commander Cole. Yeah, the training. Rutledge's smile was ugly now, the alcohol stripping away pretense. See, what bothered me is how you showed me up in front of my men. Made me look weak. That wasn't my intention. I was demonstrating a technique. Right. A technique. He was 10 feet away now. Jensen and Wolf had spread out, creating a triangle with Elena at the center. Professional ambush positions. The kind of tactical movement that came from years of training. Funny thing is, Rutledge continued, I've been thinking about that technique all evening, wondering if it was luck or if you actually know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing, Sergeant. Elena's voice stayed calm, but her body was preparing. Muscles loose, weight balanced. Now I'm going to ask you to step back and let me leave. Or what? Rutledge took another step now, less than 8 feet away. You going to throw me again? Here with no witnesses. Elena's training kicked in, assessed the situation. 3 hostile actors, intoxicated, aggressive posture. Closest cover, her truck 15 feet to her right. Nearest security call box 50 yards behind her. Help response time 3 to 5 minutes. She was alone. This is your last chance, she said quietly. Walk away, sleep it off. Tomorrow we pretend this never happened. Rutledge's laugh was harsh. You don't get it, do you, women like you? Playing soldier, thinking you're special because you can throw around some techniques. You need to learn your place. He lunged. Elena had been expecting it, was already moving before his hand reached her. She sidestepped, used his momentum against him, sent him stumbling past her into empty air. But Jensen was faster than she'd anticipated. He came in from the side, grabbing for her arm. She twisted, broke his grip with a sharp wrist rotation, drove her elbow into his solar plexus hard enough to make him understand this wasn't a game. He gasped, staggered back, bent over, trying to catch his breath. Wolf hesitated. He was watching Elena with new eyes, seeing not a woman, but a trained operator who'd just neutralized 2 attackers in as many seconds. Wolf, Rutledge snarled, recovering his balance. Don't just stand there. But Wolf stayed where he was, hands half raised. Sarge, this is too far. She's an instructor. We're on a Navy base. She embarrassed me. She needs to learn. Travis, man, let's just go. Jensen was bent over, still trying to breathe. This is a bad idea. For a moment, Elena thought they might actually leave, thought the situation might de-escalate into nothing more than a drunken confrontation and a disciplinary report tomorrow morning. Then Rutledge's hand went to his belt, and everything changed. The knife appeared, 8 inches of blackened steel catching the parking lot lights. A K-bar, the iconic combat blade carried by Marines and adopted by operators across all branches. Rutledge held it low and ready, the grip of someone who knew how to use it. You! He breathed, his eyes wild with alcohol and wounded pride. I'll teach you what happens when you disrespect a ranger. Wolf actually backed away. Travis, no. This is assault with a weapon. They'll court-martial you. Shut up. Rutledge's voice was barely human now, all rational thought drowned in rage. I'm just going to scare her. Remind her what real soldiers can do. Elena's world narrowed to the blade. She'd trained knife defense for 15 years. From her father's backyard lessons to advanced Krav Maga courses with Israeli instructors. She knew the statistics. Knife fights were chaos. Everyone got cut. Survival was about damage control and accepting that blood was the price of living. But Travis Rutledge didn't know what he was facing. Didn't know about the 10,000 hours of practice. Didn't know about the muscle memory burned so deep she could execute techniques unconscious. Didn't know that Declan Ashford had taught his daughter to survive situations exactly like this. Rutledge slashed at her. A wide arc meant to intimidate more than injure. Textbook amateur mistake. Elena's hands moved in the pattern her father had taught her on her 16th birthday. Left forearm up. Outside block. Paring the blade away from her body. Step inside the arc where the knife couldn't reach. Right hand capturing his wrist. Thumb finding the pressure point that made his fingers spasm involuntarily. Rutledge tried to pull back. Tried to reverse the knife. But Elena was already inside his decision loop. She stepped closer still, her body against his, eliminating any space where the blade could be effective. Her right elbow came up fast and hard, catching him perfectly on the point of his jaw. His head snapped back. His eyes went unfocused for a critical second. And in that second, Elena applied pressure to his wrist with surgical precision, twisting at exactly the angle that turned his own anatomy against him. The K-bar clattered to the concrete. Rutledge roared, tried to grab her with his free hand, but she was already behind him, had already slipped her arm around his neck in the rear naked choke her father had perfected during 3 decades of teaching. Not a blood choke, not a trachea crush, but the perfect combination that closed the carotid arteries and sent the brain into emergency shutdown. Rutledge struggled, his superior size and strength meaning nothing against technique and position. His face went from red to purple. His movements became erratic, then weak. 8 seconds after the choke locked in, he went limp. Elena lowered him carefully to the ground, checked his breathing, confirmed he was unconscious, but stable. Then she stood, turning to face Jensen and Wolf. Jensen's eyes were wide with shock. Wolf had his hands raised in surrender. "I didn't touch you," Wolf said quickly. "I tried to stop him. You saw that." Headlights swept the parking lot. A Humvee with security forces markings rounded the corner, lights flashing. The vehicle screeched to a stop. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez Master-at-Arms emerged with 3 security personnel, all moving with practiced efficiency. "Freeze. Nobody move." Elena stepped away from Rutledge, hands visible. "Chief Rodriguez, Staff Sergeant Rutledge assaulted me with a deadly weapon. I defended myself. His knife is on the ground, approximately 6 feet to my right. These 2 are witnesses." Rodriguez took in the scene with the quick assessment of an experienced military cop. Unconscious Army Ranger on the ground, knife visible in the lighting, 2 other Rangers looking guilty and scared, and Elena Ashford, 5'3" and maybe 130, soaking wet, standing calm and professional. "Miss Ashford, are you injured?" "No, Chief." "Anyone else injured?" Jensen raised his hand weakly. "She elbowed me in the stomach, but I'm okay." Rodriguez's eyebrow rose slightly, but he didn't comment. He keyed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Rodriguez. I need medical duty officer and NCIS to parking lot Charlie immediately. Assault with a deadly weapon suspect in custody." As his team secured the scene, Rodriguez approached Elena. They'd worked together before, had mutual respect built on professionalism and competence. "What happened?" he asked quietly. "Check the security cameras, Chief. They'll show everything." Elena kept her voice factual, trained from her intelligence days to report observations without emotional color. "Sergeant Rutledge, he and his men approached me. Verbal confrontation escalated to physical assault. Rutledge produced a knife. I defended myself using appropriate force." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "The cameras will confirm this, every second." A groan from the ground. Rutledge was coming around, his eyes fluttering open. Confusion giving way to rage as he realized what had happened, where he was, what he'd done. Rodriguez's security team had him in flex cuffs before he could move. "Staff Sergeant Travis Rutledge, you are being detained for assault with a deadly weapon on a naval installation. You have the right to remain silent." "She attacked us." Rutledge struggled against the restraints, his voice hoarse. "That bitch attacked 3 soldiers." "Sir, I strongly suggest you remain silent until you have legal representation." Rodriguez's voice was flat professional, utterly unmoved. Medical arrived, checked Rutledge for injuries, declared him fit for transport. The duty officer took statements. And finally, pulling up in an unmarked sedan, the on-call NCIS agent arrived. Dr. Nora Sullivan was 42 professional, with the particular intensity of federal investigators who'd seen the worst humanity had to offer. Red hair going silver at the temples, sharp eyes that cataloged everything. She'd been woken at home 20 minutes ago, but still arrived with complete focus. She spoke briefly with Rodriguez, reviewed the security camera footage on a tablet, then approached Elena. "Miss Ashford, I'm Special Agent Sullivan, NCIS. I need to ask you some questions about tonight's incident." "Of course, Agent." "Did you know Staff Sergeant Rutledge prior to today? We met this afternoon during a training demonstration. Tonight's confrontation was our second interaction." Elena walked Sullivan through the entire sequence, her training and intelligence work, making her account precise and factual, times, positions, exact words when possible, observable facts rather than interpretations. Sullivan listened, took notes, her expression neutral, giving nothing away. When Elena finished, the agent was quiet for a long moment. "The security footage corroborates your account completely," Sullivan finally said. "Self-defense, textbook case, but I need you to understand something, Miss Ashford. Agent, this isn't Rutledge's first incident." "I've heard he has a history that's been suppressed by influential family connections." Sullivan met Elena's eyes directly. "His father is Brigadier General Marcus Rutledge. This time is different. You're military personnel. The assault occurred on federal property. We have crystal clear evidence. Good, Elena said simply. There will be repercussions. His father will push back. You'll be questioned extensively. This won't be simple. I understand. Sullivan's expression softened slightly. I read your file while driving over. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, intelligence operations in some very dangerous places. You're not someone who scares easily. I learned from the best, Elena said quietly. My father taught me to stand up, do what's right, and deal with the consequences. Rear Admiral Ashford. I knew of him. Good man. Sullivan closed her notebook. You're free to go, but I'll need you available for follow-up questions. Don't leave the area. As Sullivan walked away, Elena finally allowed herself to feel the adrenaline crash. Her hands trembled slightly. The parking lot seemed too bright, the sounds too loud. Her phone rang. Vandenberg, of course. He'd heard already. I'm fine, she said before he could ask. Rodriguez called me. Said you took down 3 Rangers, one armed with a knife. I took down one. The other 2 were just there. Elena. Vandenberg's voice was rough with emotion. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Dad's training worked. A long pause, then, I'm coming over. Dutch, it's late. I'm fine, really. I'm already in the truck. After everyone left, Elena stood alone by her vehicle. The knife was gone bagged as evidence, but the memory would stay sharp. She'd been trained for this her entire life. Had known someday her father's lessons would be tested, not on a training mat, but in real violence with real consequences. Tonight had been that test, and she'd passed. But the passing felt hollow, because she knew this wasn't over. Rutledge wouldn't forget. His father wouldn't let it rest. The system that had protected him before would try to protect him again. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. Elena climbed into her father's truck, started the engine, and drove toward home, watching her mirrors, trusting nothing. Exactly as she'd been taught. The interrogation room at the Naval Special Warfare Command building smelled of stale coffee and fluorescent lighting. Elena sat alone at the metal table, her posture relaxed despite the tension humming through her body. It was 0200 hours, technically Tuesday morning, and she'd been waiting for 40 minutes. The door opened. Captain Barrett Cole entered first, his expression carefully neutral. Behind him came NCIS Special Agent Nora Sullivan, carrying a thick folder. And then, to Elena's relief, Captain Dutch Vandenberg. Dutch looked like he'd dressed in 30 seconds. Mismatched socks visible above his deck shoes. His jacket zipped over what was probably a sleep shirt, but his eyes were sharp, alert, protective. Miss Ashford. Sullivan took the seat across from Elena, placed the folder on the table, but didn't open it. Thank you for your patience. This is a complex situation. I understand, Agent Sullivan. Captain Vandenberg has been read in as a character witness and advisor. Captain Cole is here representing Naval Special Warfare Command, and I'm here because NCIS handles all felony assaults on naval installations. Elena nodded. Standard procedure. But the presence of 3 senior officials at 0200 meant this was bigger than a simple assault case. Sullivan opened the folder, revealing security camera stills. The images were crisp, well-lit, damning. Rutledge grabbing Elena's arm, the knife appearing. Elena's defensive sequence captured in brutal clarity. Rutledge unconscious on the ground. The security footage is unambiguous, Sullivan said. You were assaulted. You defended yourself. Everything you told Chief Rodriguez matches the evidence perfectly. Then why am I here? Elena kept her voice level. Cole leaned forward. Because Staff Sergeant Travis Rutledge is claiming you initiated the confrontation. He says you've been harassing him since the training demonstration. Vandenberg made a disgusted sound. That's absurd. The cameras show. We know what the cameras show, Dutch. Sullivan's voice was patient. But there's something else you need to know. Something that changes the entire situation. She pulled out a new folder, this one marked with classification warnings. Top secret. Sensitive compartmented information. For the past 8 months, NCIS and Army CID have been running a joint investigation into weapons trafficking from Afghanistan. Military equipment that should have been destroyed has been appearing in the United States. High-end gear. Night vision systems. Body armor. Modified weapons. Cole's expression was grim. How much are we talking about? Conservatively $2 million worth of equipment over the past 2 years. Rifles, optics, communications gear. It's being sold to domestic militia groups, survivalist organizations, and individuals on terrorist watch lists. Elena felt the pieces clicking into place. Rutledge is involved. We believe he's a courier. Not the mastermind, but an essential part of the network. He rotated back from Afghanistan 6 months ago. Since then, we've documented 4 large shipments of military equipment entering the San Diego area. The timeline matches his leave periods. Vandenberg stood paced to the window. You're telling us that tonight's assault might blow your investigation? If we charge Rutledge now, his lawyers will claim persecution. They'll tie up the case in military courts for months. And while that happens, the trafficking network will scatter. Sullivan pulled out more documents. Surveillance photos. A warehouse in Chula Vista. Men loading crates. And in one photo, Travis Rutledge standing next to a semi-truck, shaking hands with a man whose face was partially obscured. We need someone inside, Sullivan said quietly. The room went very quiet. Absolutely not. Vandenberg turned from the window. You're asking her to go undercover with a man who just tried to assault her. I'm asking her to use her intelligence training. Sullivan's voice was calm. Miss Ashford spent 2 years running assets in Iraq. She's qualified for this kind of operation. Dutch. Elena's voice cut through his objection. Let her finish. Sullivan nodded gratitude. Rutledge will think he won. His ego will be inflated. Men like that can't help but brag. We wire you up. You attend a party. You document who's there and what's being sold. When the deal goes down, we move in. And if something goes wrong, Cole asked, we'll have SWAT 2 blocks away. Full tactical team. At the first sign of trouble, we extract. Elena studied the surveillance photos. The warehouse looked industrial, isolated, but she thought about those 3 women who'd faced Rutledge before. The ones who'd accepted transfers, signed NDAs, been sent home and forgotten. She thought about her father, about the lessons he taught not just in combat techniques, but in character. Stand up. Do what's right. What's the larger investigation, she asked. You said Rutledge is small fish. Who are you really after? Sullivan and Cole exchanged glances. Finally, Sullivan opened the classified folder completely. Inside was a photograph of a man in Navy khakis. Chief Petty Officer insignia. Special warfare trident visible. Hard face. Cold eyes that had seen too much. Chief Petty Officer Wade Kincaid, Sullivan said. Retired SEAL Team 5. 22 years of service. Decorated veteran. Elena stared at the photograph. Something cold spreading through her chest. I know that name, she whispered. Vandenberg was at her side immediately. Elena, Wade Kincaid served with my father, 2005 to 2008. I think Dad talked about him. They were friends. Sullivan's expression was sympathetic but resolute. We believe Chief Kincaid is running the trafficking operation. He retired in 2019 with a 30% disability rating. Filed multiple appeals for higher compensation, all denied. He's bitter, financially desperate, and still has contacts throughout the special operations community. Dad trusted him. Elena's voice sounded distant. People change, Cole said quietly, especially when they feel the system failed them. Vandenberg put a hand on Elena's shoulder. This is too much. First, Rutledge now finding out you'd have to help take down Declan's friend. But Elena was thinking about her father's funeral 5 years ago. Standing at Arlington, Kincaid had been there in dress blues, tears on his weathered face. He'd approached her after, said something about Declan being the best man he'd ever served with. Had that been real? Or had the rot already started? Show me the evidence, she said. Sullivan laid it out methodically. Financial records showing Kincaid depositing large cash amounts. Surveillance photos of him meeting with known militia leaders. Intercepted communications using coded language. And most damning, a customs inspection report showing discrepancies in equipment manifests from Kincaid's last deployment. The weapons showing up in militia raids have serial numbers, Sullivan explained. They match equipment assigned to SEAL Team 5 during Kincaid's final deployment. Specifically, HK-416 rifles with custom modifications only used by Naval Special Warfare. That's Dad's weapon system, Elena said. He helped develop those modifications. Which is why this is particularly painful. Sullivan pulled out another surveillance image. Thermal imaging. We're also concerned about this. She pointed to a heat signature in the warehouse's second-floor office. Thermal shows what might be stored explosives. Kincaid has EOD training from his SEAL days. We believe he's rigged the building as insurance. Vandenberg leaned forward. A dead man's switch. Possibly. We won't know until we're inside, which is why extraction protocol is critical. If Kincaid feels cornered, he might try to take everyone with him. Elena felt the cold spread through her chest, turned to ice. You're sending me into a building that might be rigged to explode. We'll have EOD specialists staged with SWAT. The moment we confirm explosives, they move in. But Elena, you need to know the full risk profile before you commit. The anger that had been cold in Elena's chest turned hot. Her father had spent 30 years serving his country, building systems to protect warriors. And now, someone he trusted was perverting that legacy for profit. What do you need from me? She asked. Sullivan pulled out a detailed briefing packet. Phase 1. Tomorrow morning you return to work. Act professional, but subdued. When you cross paths with Rutledge, you apologize. You stroke his ego. Phase 2. Over the next few days, you continue being deferential. Rutledge will test you, push boundaries. You accept it. His arrogance will grow. Eventually, he'll invite you to the warehouse party. Phase 3. Friday night, you attend the party wearing a wire, video and audio recording. You document everyone present, everything said. And most importantly, you confirm Kincaid's involvement in the weapons transfer. And when the deal goes down, Cole asked, we have SWAT staged nearby. The moment money and weapons exchange hands, we move. You get clear. We arrest everyone. Cole cleared his throat. The risk profile on this is significant. If Kincaid recognizes you, he will. Elena interrupted. I look like my mother. Dad said so all the time. Kincaid knew my mother. He'll make the connection. Then we need a cover story, Sullivan said. They worked through scenarios for the next hour. Finally, they settled on something simple. Elena would use her middle name, Madison. She'd claimed to be a Navy contractor who did physical therapy work at the base. Met Rutledge during a training session. He invited her to a party. She accepted. Thin but plausible. We'll need to train you on the wire equipment, Sullivan said, and I want you working with our behavioral specialist. When do we start? 6 hours. Get some sleep, then report to the NCA's field office at 0900. As the meeting broke up, Cole pulled Elena aside. I know what you're thinking, that you owe this to your father, to those women Rutledge hurt, to the integrity of the service. But Elena, you don't owe anyone your safety. If this feels wrong at any point, you can walk away. I appreciate that, sir, but I'm not walking away. Vandenberg drove her home in silence. As he pulled into the driveway, he finally spoke. Your dad and I had a conversation once. 2010, I think. He just found out you wanted to join the Navy. He was terrified. He never showed it? Of course not. He was Declan Ashford. But late one night, he told me his biggest fear wasn't that you get hurt. It was that you be put in a position where you had to choose between safety and duty. And he'd raised you to always choose duty. Elena looked at the house, at the light she'd left burning. He raised me right. I know. That's what scares me. Vandenberg's voice was rough. I promised him, Elena. At the funeral, I promised I'd look out for you. You are looking out for me by respecting my choices. And if those choices get you killed, then I died doing something that mattered. She opened the door, paused. Dad didn't raise me to be safe, Dutch. He raised me to be useful. There's a difference. Inside, the house felt empty without her father's presence. She'd kept everything mostly the way he'd left it. His books on the shelves, his Navy photographs on the walls, his coffee mug still in the cabinet. She made tea, sat at the kitchen table, called up the photo on her phone. Her father in his hospital bed 2 days before the cancer won. Thin and weak, but still commanding. His hand holding hers, his eyes still sharp. I'm going to take down your friend, she told the photograph. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you trusted him, but he perverted everything you built, and I can't let that stand. She finished her tea and went to bed, but sleep was elusive. Her mind kept replaying the parking lot confrontation, kept fast-forwarding to Friday night in a warehouse full of criminals and weapons. At 0430, she gave up on sleep and went for a run on the beach. The Pacific was still gray in the pre-dawn light. She ran 5 miles at combat pace, pushing until her lungs burned, using physical pain to quiet the mental noise. The NCIS field office was a nondescript building in downtown San Diego. Elena arrived at 0900 sharp, was escorted to a conference room where Sullivan waited with 2 technical specialists and a woman in her 50s with intelligent eyes. Miss Ashford, this is Dr. Angela Foster, our operational psychologist. She'll be helping you prepare for the emotional aspects of the undercover work. Dr. Foster's handshake was firm. I understand you have intelligence experience, but this is different. This is personal. The man who assaulted you will be there. The man who betrayed your father's trust will be there. We need to make sure you can maintain operational discipline under that kind of emotional pressure. They spent 2 hours role-playing scenarios. Dr. Foster played Rutledge, then Kincaid, pushing Elena's buttons, testing her responses. You're angry, Dr. Foster observed during a break. That's natural, but anger makes you reactive. In this operation, you need to be observational, a camera, not a participant. I can separate my emotions from the mission. Can you? When Rutledge makes a crude comment, when he touches you inappropriately, when he brags about getting away with assault, can you smile and nod and record it all without reacting? Elena thought about those women again. About justice delayed and perpetrators emboldened. Yes, because every second of footage, every recorded word is ammunition for the prosecution. Dr. Foster studied her for a long moment. You're more like your father than you know. He had that same ability to think strategically, even in emotionally charged situations. But Elena, it's okay to acknowledge that this will be hard. What doesn't make me stronger? Knowing your limits. Having an exit strategy, understanding that there's no shame in calling for extraction if the situation becomes untenable. The technical specialists showed her the wire equipment. A tiny camera embedded in what looked like a normal shirt button. Audio recorder, smaller than a stick of gum concealed in the underwire of a sports bra. Both devices transmitted to a receiver van up to 300 yards away. They made her practice wearing the equipment, moving naturally, remembering not to cover the camera with her arms or jacket. By 1400 hours, Sullivan declared her ready. Tomorrow you return to work. Wednesday and Thursday, you build rapport with Rutledge. Friday night is the operation. SWAT will be commanded by Lieutenant Webb Sterling. You'll meet him Thursday for final tactical planning. And if Kincaid recognizes me immediately, you stick to the cover story. Madison Blake, physical therapy contractor, friend of Rutledge. If he pushes mention you knew your father served with him, but you didn't want to bring it up because it's painful. Make it about grief, not deception. Elena nodded, but doubt nodded her. Kincaid was an experienced SEAL. Could she really fool him? One more thing. Sullivan pulled out a small device that looked like a car key fob. Panic button. You press this, we come in hard and fast. Consequences be damned. Your safety takes priority over the investigation. Understood. As Elena left the field office, her phone rang. Vandenberg. How did it go? I'm wired, briefed, and ready to lie to criminals for the next 4 days. Listen, I pulled some strings. I'm assigned as tactical advisor to the SWAT team Friday night. I'll be in the command van watching the feeds. Relief flooded through her. Dutch, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Plus, I know that warehouse. Ran training exercises there in the 90s. I can guide SWAT through the building if needed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over and everyone's in custody and you're safe. Tuesday morning, Elena returned to the Naval Special Warfare Center. In her uniform. Professional demeanor in place, dread coiling in her stomach. The word had spread through the base overnight. Everyone knew about the parking lot assault. She ignored them all. Went to her office, reviewed the day's training schedule. At 0800, Lieutenant Commander Cole summoned her. The settlement is official, he said without preamble. Rutledge accepted in Article 15. Reduction to E5. Confined to base. In exchange, all parties agreed to treat the incident as a misunderstanding exacerbated by alcohol. The words tasted like ash. I understand, sir. Publicly, this is resolved. Privately, I want you to know that I find the whole situation repugnant. But I'm told there are larger considerations. Yes, sir. Be careful, Ashford. Men like Rutledge don't forget humiliation. I'm counting on it, sir. At 1000 hours during a break in training, Elena saw Rutledge across the yard. He was with his rangers, all of them watching her. When their eyes met, he smiled. Predatory, triumphant, vicious. She forced herself to look away first. Forced herself to project weakness, defeat. It was the hardest thing she'd done since watching her father die. That afternoon, during equipment maintenance, Rutledge approached her directly. Jensen and Wolf hung back, clearly uncomfortable. Hey. Rutledge's voice was casual, but his eyes were calculating. Wanted to say no hard feelings about the other night. Guess we both had too much adrenaline going. Every instinct screamed at Elena to tell him exactly what she thought. Instead, she ducked her head slightly. The body language of submission. I overreacted, she forced out. I'm sorry, I hurt you. Water under the bridge. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, deliberately. You know you're not bad when you're not trying to prove something. Maybe we could get a drink sometime. Off base. Start over. The wire was recording every word. The camera was capturing his body language, his invasion of her space, and the implicit threat. Maybe, she said quietly. I'd like that. Rutledge's smile widened. He'd won, or thought he had. I'll be in touch, he said, and walked away. Jensen lingered for a moment. Miss Ashford, don't, Elena interrupted softly. Just go. He went, and she stood alone in the equipment yard fighting the urge to vomit. Instead, she finished her duties, filed her reports, and went home to review the footage with Sullivan. Perfect, the NCIS agent said over secure video call. He's already getting comfortable, already pushing boundaries. Give it 2 more days, and he'll be bragging about everything. Wednesday was more of the same. Rutledge found excuses to interact with her, always with that smile, always testing how much he could push. Twice he touched her arm without permission. Once he made a comment about her body that would have gotten him court-martialed if anyone had officially heard it. The wire heard it, the camera saw it, and the case against him grew stronger. Wednesday night, Elena pulled out old photo albums, found pictures from family barbecues, Wade Kincaid, was in several of them. 1998. A younger man with kind eyes, teaching 8-year-old Elena how to tie knots. Laughing at something Declan said. Had that man really become a weapons trafficker? Thursday morning, Vandenberg came to our house with coffee and bagels. Couldn't sleep, he said. Kept thinking about Wade. Me too. Your dad tried to help him, you know, after Wade's wife got sick. 2015. Declan offered him money. Wade refused. Why? Pride. That's what your dad said. Wade had too much pride to accept what he saw as charity, even from his best friend. So he turned to crime instead. Desperation makes people do terrible things. Vandenberg stared at his coffee. Wade saved your father's life. Fallujah 2006. Took 3 rounds meant for Declan. They hit Wade's body armor, but the impact broke 2 ribs. He kept fighting, got your dad to safety, then went back for 2 more wounded. Elena tried to reconcile that story with a man who was selling weapons to domestic terrorists. Do you think he knows I'm coming? She asked. Vandenberg was quiet for a long moment. I think Wade knows everything. Your dad always said Wade was the better tactical operator. Declan got promoted because he played politics. Wade stayed pure operator. That means Wade sees things other people miss. So Friday night? Friday night, you assume Wade knows exactly who you are, and you prepare accordingly. That afternoon, Elena met with Lieutenant Webb Sterling and the SWAT team at a secure facility. Sterling was 45, built like a linebacker, with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating presence. Miss Ashford, I want you to know that your safety is
My primary concern, he said immediately. The investigation is important, but not as important as making sure you walk out of that warehouse alive and unharmed. They reviewed the tactical plan. SWAT would be staged in 2 vans 2 blocks from the warehouse. 4 additional officers in civilian clothes would be scattered around the perimeter. The moment the weapons transfer was confirmed, or the moment Elena signaled danger, they'd breach. Breach time from your signal is 90 seconds, Sterling explained. I know that sounds like forever when you're in danger, but it's actually fast for this kind of operation.
Can you give us 90 seconds? Elena thought about her training, about the parking lot fight, about every hard lesson her father had taught her. I can give you 90 seconds. Vandenberg pulled her aside after the briefing. I've been thinking about Kincaid, about what you should say if he recognizes you. Sullivan gave me a cover story. Forget the cover story. If Wade recognizes you, tell him the truth. Tell him you're Declan's daughter, that you heard about the party through Rutledge, that you wanted to see what your dad's old teammates were up to. Make it about nostalgia and curiosity, not investigation. That's off script. Sometimes off script is more believable than rehearsed lies. Wade knew you as a kid. He knew your father. Playing on that emotional connection might be safer than trying to deceive him completely. It made sense. But it also terrified her. Using her father's memory as a shield felt wrong. I'll play it by ear, she finally said. That's all I ask. Just remember, you've got 20 trained operators ready to come get you. You're not alone in this. Thursday afternoon, her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Travis. Party tomorrow night, 2100 hours. Warehouse at 2847 Industrial Way, Chula Vista. Dress casual. Going to be a good time. She stared at the message, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. She texted back, see you there. Then she forwarded the message to Sullivan and began her final preparations. Friday descended on San Diego with the weight of inevitability. Elena woke at 0500, her internal clock refusing to acknowledge rest. The house felt charged with the energy of a mission about to commence. She ran her usual 5 miles on the beach, but this time she wasn't running to clear her mind. She was running through scenarios, contingencies, escape routes. The warehouse layout was burned into her memory. 2 main entrances, loading bay. Rear offices on the 2nd floor, with external fire escape. 3 potential choke points. Back home, she showered and forced herself to eat breakfast. Operational discipline demanded fuel, clarity, the physical preparation that might mean the difference between success and catastrophe. Her phone rang at 0730. Sullivan. How are you feeling? Ready? NCIS Tech will be at your house at 1800 to fit the wire. SWAT stages at 2000. We'll have eyes on the warehouse starting at 1900. You arrive at 2100 as planned. Understood. Elena. Sullivan's voice softened. You can still back out. There's no other way. Not one that puts these people away for good. After Sullivan hung up, Elena spent the morning in careful preparation. She selected her clothes with tactical precision. Dark jeans that allowed movement, fitted black top that would conceal the wire, leather jacket with internal pockets for the panic button, boots with good traction. She checked her personal Glock 19, the weapon her father had given her on her 21st birthday. Sullivan had secured authorization given the circumstances. The weight in her ankle holster was comforting. At 1300 hours, Vandenberg arrived unannounced with takeout lunch. Figured you might need company, he said, unpacking Thai food on her kitchen table. They ate in silence for a while. Then Vandenberg said quietly, "Your dad and I ran an op together in 91. Gulf War. We were tasked with infiltrating an Iraqi command post. Just the two of us. Behind enemy lines. 6 days. I never heard this story. It's still classified, but you should know it now." Vandenberg stared at his food, lost in memory. "Third night we were compromised. Iraqi patrol stumbled on our hide site. Declan could have run. Instead he created a diversion. Drew them away. Got himself captured." Elena's breath caught. Captured for 18 hours. They interrogated him. Roughed him up. But he never broke. Never gave up the mission or my location. I completed the intelligence gathering and called in extraction. When our guys hit the compound, Declan was still spitting defiance. "Why are you telling me this now?" Vandenberg met her eyes. Because when they asked him later why he didn't run, you know what he said? Running would have been safer. But safety isn't the mission. The mission is the mission. Tonight, Elena's safety isn't your mission. Justice is your mission, just like it was his. The weight of that legacy settled over her shoulders like armor. At 1800 hours, the NCIS technical team arrived. 2 specialists, both women, both professional and efficient. They fitted Elena with the recording equipment, testing and retesting. The camera button went on her jacket positioned for optimal field of view. The audio recorder concealed in her sports bra. The transmitter no larger than a credit card. They gave her the panic button disguised as a tube of lipstick. Twist the bottom twice fast and we'll have your location within 5 seconds. The senior tech explained. SWAT deploys immediately. 90 seconds to breach. After they left, Elena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying herself. She looked like she always did. Maybe a bit more makeup than usual. Hair down instead of pulled back. Madison Blake, the contractor. Not Elena Ashford, the operator. But in her eyes, she could see the truth. The hardness, the determination, the absolute focus that came before combat. Her father had worn that same expression in photographs from the Gulf, from Panama, from a dozen classified operations. "For you, Dad," she said to her reflection, "and for everyone he betrayed." At 20:30, Sullivan called with final confirmation. SWAT is in position. Surveillance shows approximately 15 people inside the warehouse already. "We've identified Rutledge Kincaid and 3 known militia members. This is happening, Elena. Last chance to abort. I'm going in. Then stay sharp, stay safe, and remember we're right there with you." Elena drove her truck through the industrial outskirts of Chula Vista as the sun set over the Pacific. This part of the city was all warehouses and shipping facilities. Legitimate businesses shuttered for the weekend. She found Industrial Way easily, followed it to number 2847. The warehouse was exactly as Sterling had described. 2-story concrete structure, loading bay visible in the rear, minimal external lighting, 4 vehicles in the parking area, including Rutledge's lifted pickup. 2 men stood outside the main entrance, clearly acting as guards. Both were large. Both carried themselves with military bearing. Elena parked, took a deep breath, and became Madison Blake. She walked toward the entrance, heels clicking on asphalt. The guards watched her approach, exchanged glances. "Help you." The taller one was maybe 30. "Travis invited me. Travis Rutledge." They relaxed slightly. Name, Madison Blake. The guard keyed his radio. "Boss got a Madison here. Says Rutledge invited her." Static. Then Rutledge's voice. "Yeah, send her in." Inside, the warehouse had been transformed into something between a social club and an armory. Folding tables held beer and pizza. A poker game occupied one corner. But Elena's trained eye went immediately to the crates stacked against the far wall, labeled automotive parts. Approximately 18 men filled the space. Most were military-aged. Fit, wearing civilian clothes that didn't quite hide their operator backgrounds. A few were older, harder. And there near the poker table was Travis Rutledge. He saw her immediately, his face lighting up with predatory satisfaction. "Madison, you actually came. You said it would be fun." She smiled, let him take her hand, resisted the urge to break his fingers. "Oh, it will be. Come on, let me introduce you around." In the SWAT van, 2 blocks away, Vandenberg watched the video feed from Elena's camera. His heart hammering. Sterling sat beside him, tactical headset on, coordinating positions. "She's in," Sterling said quietly into his radio. "All teams maintain position. We wait for confirmation of the transfer." Rutledge walked Elena through the warehouse, introducing her to rangers, to men whose faces would later be matched with military records and militia watch lists. The camera captured everything. "And this," Rutledge said, steering her toward a man standing near the crates, "is the guy who makes everything happen. Chief Kincaid, this is Madison Blake. She does physical therapy at the base." Wade Kincaid turned, and Elena's breath caught. He was exactly as she remembered from 5 years ago. just harder. 54 years old, built like a fire hydrant, silver hair cropped short. Deep-set eyes that had seen too much. Those eyes met hers, and she saw the recognition flicker immediately. Madison Blake? Kincaid repeated slowly. His voice was gravel and smoke. Funny name. You from around here? Navy brat, actually. Grew up all over. What's your last name, Madison? She'd prepared for this. Going with Vandenberg's advice. Trust the truth more than the lie. Ashford, she said quietly. Madison Ashford. Kincaid went very still. Around them, the warehouse noise continued, but in their small bubble time seemed to suspend. Ashford, he repeated. Any relation to Declan Ashford? He was my father. She let grief color her voice, which wasn't hard because the grief was real. He died 5 years ago. Cancer. I know. I was at the funeral. Kincaid's expression shifted through several emotions. You were the one who gave the eulogy. I remember now. You look like your mother. Everyone says that. What are you doing here, Elena? The use of her real name was deliberate. Rutledge, sensing something wrong, moved closer. Everything okay, Chief? This is Declan Ashford's daughter. Kincaid's voice was flat, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. The entire warehouse seemed to pause. What? Rutledge's face went pale. You didn't tell me, because I didn't think it mattered. Elena kept her voice steady. Travis invited me to a party. I didn't know you'd be here, Chief Kincaid. My dad served with you. He talked about you. Said you were one of the good ones. When Travis mentioned some of Dad's old teammates got together, sometimes I wanted to see for myself. It was a gamble. But it had the advantage of being emotionally true, even if operationally false. Kincaid studied her for a long moment. In the van, Vandenberg held his breath. Sterling's hand hovered over the radio. Then Kincaid's expression softened slightly. Declan was the best man I ever served with. His death was a loss to everyone who knew him. Thank you. Elena let real tears gather. He thought the same of you. But Elena, this isn't the kind of party your dad would want you at. Kincaid's voice carried warning. These are rough men doing rough business. I can handle rough. Dad didn't raise me to be delicate. No, I don't suppose he did. Kincaid seemed to come to a decision. All right, you're here. You're Declan's daughter. You're welcome. But stay close to Rutledge. Don't wander. And when I say it's time to leave, you leave. Clear. Clear. Crisis navigated. But Elena knew she was on borrowed time. Kincaid was suspicious. We'll be watching her. And in less than an hour, when the weapons deal went down, everything would explode. The mission had just become infinitely more dangerous, and there was no turning back now. Rutledge steered Elena toward the makeshift bar area, his hand on her lower back, possessive and threatening. She forced herself not to flinch, not to break the fingers that touched her without permission. The wire was recording. The camera was capturing. Every second of this nightmare was evidence. Drink, Rutledge asked. Beer's fine. As Rutledge fetched drinks, one of the older men approached. Grant Foley, militia leader from Idaho, FBI watch list. Elena recognized him from the briefing materials. 60 years old, with the flat effect of the Mountain West, and eyes that had seen violence and welcomed it. Rutledge, who's the girl? Foley's voice carried across the space. Friend from the base. She's cool. She better be. Foley looked at Elena with open hostility. We got business tonight, real business. You know what happens here, girl? Elena kept her voice steady, playing Madison Blake to perfection. I don't see anything, and I don't ask questions. Smart. Foley turned back to Rutledge. Keep her that way. We go at 2200. Buyers will be here in 15 minutes. The camera was recording every word. In the van, Sullivan was coordinating with federal prosecutors. The case was building with every passing second. At 2140, a semi-truck backed up to the loading bay. The noise in the warehouse quieted. Men put down beers. Poker hands were folded. The social pretense evaporated like morning fog. This was it. The transfer. 4 men emerged from the truck. 3 were clearly muscle. Heavy, armed, moving with the particular awareness of men who expected violence. The 4th was older, maybe 65. Thin, wearing expensive civilian clothes that marked him as money not muscle. Kincaid moved to greet them. Gentlemen, glad you could make it. Let's talk business. Elena positioned herself near a support column, trying to look inconspicuous while keeping the button camera pointed toward the transaction. Rutledge stayed near her. His presence was meant to be controlling. He didn't realize he was giving her the perfect cover. Kincaid and the buyer walked to the crates. The chief pulled a crowbar from somewhere, pried one open with practiced efficiency. 40 M4 rifles, all with select fire capability restored. Kincaid said, his voice carrying across the warehouse. 25 sets of interceptor body armor, 15 PVS, 14 night vision units, all military grade, all functional. Let's see the merchandise. The buyer's voice was cultured, East Coast educated, which somehow made him more dangerous. Kincaid opened a crate fully. Inside, nestled in foam, were rifles. Even from 30 feet away, Elena could see they were HK-416s, the SEAL variant, with the specific modifications her father had helped develop over 3 decades of refinement and field testing. In the van, Vandenberg's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Those are Declan's weapons. That son of a bitch is selling Declan's legacy to terrorists. Sterling was already coordinating SWAT positions. We need confirmation of money exchange. The moment cash changes hands, we have them cold. The buyer inspected several rifles, worked the actions, checked the modifications with the eye of someone who understood weapons systems. He seemed satisfied. Price was $200,000. I've got it in the truck. Let's see it. 2 of the militia muscle returned to the semi, brought back 2 large duffel bags, black canvas, heavy. They opened them on a folding table, revealing banded stacks of $100 bills, more money than most people saw in a lifetime. Kincaid pulled out a bill counter, began verification. The warehouse was silent, except for the mechanical whir of the machine counting currency, the sound of a transaction that would arm domestic terrorists with military weapons designed to kill America's enemies. Now, being sold to become America's enemies. Then Grant Foley's voice cut through the quiet like a knife. Hey, the girl's recording us. Time fractured into crystalline shards. Every head turned toward Elena. Foley was pointing at her, his face twisted with rage and recognition. She's got a camera. Look at her jacket button. Elena saw Rutledge's expression shift. Confusion, bleeding into understanding, bleeding into fury. Saw Kincaid's hand move toward his hip with the speed of someone who'd spent 22 years in combat. Saw every armed man in the warehouse reaching for weapons. In the van, Sterling was already screaming into his radio. Breach, 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 all teams go now. Elena's hand went to her jacket, found the panic button, twisted it twice, hard. Then she was moving, dropping low as the first gunshot cracked through the warehouse like thunder. The round punched through the space where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. Concrete dust exploded from the wall behind her. She rolled, came up behind a stack of crates, drew her Glock from the ankle holster with movements her father had drilled into her until they were more reflex than thought. She's a cop, Foley was screaming. Federal agent killer. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Militia members opened fire wildly. Kincaid's people scattered for cover. Rutledge stood frozen in the open, staring at Elena with betrayed rage and dawning comprehension. Another shot. Closer. Elena saw Jensen pinned down behind an overturned table, blood spreading across his shoulder in an expanding crimson bloom. The corporal who'd tried to stop Rutledge, who'd recorded evidence, who'd chosen the harder right over the easier wrong. Her training took over. 90 seconds until SWAT breached. She needed to survive 90 seconds. Active shooter, she shouted, her voice carrying command authority. Civilian down, medical emergency. Foley appeared around the crates, pistol raised, eyes wild with the particular madness of ideology meeting reality. You lying federal bitch. Elena didn't hesitate, didn't think, just acted. 2 rounds. Center mass. Double tap. Exactly as her father had taught her. Foley stumbled backward, hit the crate, slid down, leaving a blood trail like paint on canvas. His weapon skittered across concrete. He was still alive, gasping, trying to speak. Federal bitch, he choked out. Then the light left his eyes. Elena had killed men before, in Fallujah, in Syria, but never on American soil. Never someone who spoke English without an accent. The weight of it hit her like a physical blow. No time. Keep moving. Federal agent, she called out, her voice cracking slightly. Drop your weapons. The response was a hail of gunfire from 3 directions. Rounds impacted all around her, sparking off metal, punching through wood, the smell of gunpowder thick enough to taste. Outside, SWAT was breaching the main entrance. Flashbangs detonated with concussive force that made her ears ring. Smoke began filling the warehouse, the acrid chemical fog of tactical operations. Federal commands echoed through the chaos. Get down, federal agents. Get down. But Foley's militia members weren't surrendering. They were fighting. Men who'd spent years preparing for this moment. For the day they'd face federal authority with weapons in hand. Men who'd convinced themselves they were patriots, even as they became terrorists. Elena saw one of the militia members moving toward Jensen's position. Weapon raised, intent clear. He was going to execute the wounded ranger. Without thinking, she broke cover, sprinted across open space. Every tactical instructor she'd ever had would have screamed at the decision. But Jensen was 23 years old, with a wife and a baby daughter he'd shown her pictures of during a break in training. She tackled the militia member from the side. They hit the ground together. He was bigger, heavier, outweighed her by 70 pounds. But Elena had been trained by Declan Ashford, had learned that size meant nothing against technique. She drove her elbow into his throat. Not enough to kill, just enough pressure to make him gag and release his weapon. Then she kicked it away and rolled clear. "Stay down," she screamed at Jensen. "Medical is coming." A figure emerged from the smoke like a demon from hell. Travis Rutledge, K-bar knife in his hand, the same type of blade he'd pulled in the parking lot. His face was contorted with rage, so pure it barely looked human anymore. "You played me," he snarled. "You lying bitch. You destroyed everything. Drop the knife, Travis. It's over. It's not over until I finish what I started." He lunged, the blade seeking her throat with the speed of someone who'd trained with knives for years. But Elena had learned this lesson already. Had lived this scenario 3 nights ago in a parking lot where she'd proven that skill defeated strength. She parried his knife hand, stepped inside his reach, used his momentum. But this time, she didn't just disarm him. This time, she was done with half measures. Knee to groin, full force, elbow to face as he doubled over. Then she drove him to the ground with force that cracked his head against concrete. The knife clattered away. Rutledge didn't get up. A SWAT operator reached her position. "Full tactical gear. MP5 at the ready." "Ma'am, are you Ashford?" "Yes. Wounded man behind that table. 20 feet. Corporal Jensen. Gunshot wound right shoulder. Needs immediate medical." The operator relayed the information. 2 more SWAT members appeared with medical gear, moving with practiced efficiency toward Jensen's position. Elena stayed low. Weapon ready, scanning for threats. The militia members were either down or surrendering now. Hands behind heads. Federal agents swarming the space, but Kincaid's people had scattered. Where was Kincaid? She spotted him near the office stairs. Moving fast, despite his age. And in his hand was something that made Elena's blood freeze into ice. A dead man's switch, connected to what looked like a brick of C4 explosive, exactly as the briefing had warned, exactly as the thermal imaging had suggested. "Warehouse is rigged," Elena screamed. "Kincaid has a bomb." Everything stopped. SWAT operators froze mid-step. Civilians hit the deck. Even the surrendering militia members went pale. Sterling's voice came over the tactical radio. "Ashford, do you have visual on the device?" "Affirmative. Dead man's switch. Approximately 1 pound C4. He's heading toward the offices. 2nd floor. All teams hold position. Do not engage the bomber. EOD is 3 minutes out." But Elena was already moving, climbing the stairs after Kincaid, because those offices overlooked the main warehouse floor. If that bomb went off from elevation, the blast would kill everyone below. Jensen, the SWAT operators, Rutledge's men who'd chosen surrender, everyone. "Chief Kincaid," she called. "Stop!" He turned at the top of the stairs. In the emergency lighting, his face looked ancient, carved by regret and desperation, and the weight of choices that couldn't be unmade. "Elena Ashford," he said quietly. "Should have known. You look too much like your mother. Sound too much like Declan. It's over, Chief. Put down the switch. Nobody else has to die." "It's been over for a long time." He held up the switch, showed her the mechanism. Red button held down by his thumb. Spring-loaded to complete the circuit the moment pressure was released. "You know what this is. Dead man's switch. You release it, the circuit completes. The bomb detonates. Your father taught me how to make these. Iraq 2006. We were improvising traps for insurgents. He was brilliant at it. Brilliant at everything, and I was always just good enough to follow his lead. He trusted you. He shouldn't have." Kincaid's voice broke. "I let him down. Let myself down. Let everyone down." Below, SWAT had evacuated everyone they could. But Elena knew there wasn't enough time to clear the blast radius. Not with a dead man's switch. Not with a man who'd already decided how this ended. "Why?" she asked, genuinely wanting to understand, needing to understand how a man who'd saved her father's life had fallen this far. "You served honorably for 22 years. Why throw it away?" "Because the country I served betrayed me." The rage in his voice was shocking. Raw. 22 years. 3 bullet wounds. Permanent nerve damage. They gave me 30% disability. 30%. My medical bills cost more than my pension. My wife needed surgery. $180,000. She'd been sick since 2015. The VA kept denying claims. I gave them everything, and they gave me nothing. So you sold weapons to terrorists? Elena kept her voice level, non-judgmental, just stating facts. I sold weapons to Americans who feel betrayed by their own government. I'm not saying they're right, Elena, but I understand them. I am them. My father would never have accepted that justification. Kincaid's laugh was bitter, hollow. Your father died with full medical care, admiral's pension, military honors. He never had to choose between his wife's health and his honor. I did, and I chose wrong. In Elena's earpiece, Vandenberg's voice was urgent. Elena, EOD is 2 minutes out. Keep him talking. Chief Kincaid releasing that switch won't change anything. Won't pay your bills. Won't heal your wife. It'll just add murder to your charges. I'm already going to Leavenworth for the rest of my life. Might as well go out my way. That's not what teammates do. Elena took a step closer. Slow. Non-threatening. Dad taught me that. He taught you that. We don't quit. We don't take the easy way out. There's nothing easy about this. Kincaid's hand trembled on the switch. You think I want to die? Want to kill people? I just want the pain to stop. Elena saw it then. The resolve in his eyes. The decision already made. He was going to release the switch. She had one chance. One gamble. One lie wrapped in truth. Dad's last words were about you, she said, her voice breaking with manufactured grief, layered over real desperation. Kincaid went very still. In the hospital, 2 days before he died, Dutch was there. Dad said, Elena paused, let tears come. Real tears, because using her father's memory as a weapon hurt more than she'd expected. He said, tell Wade I understand why he's angry. The system failed him, but tell him crime isn't the answer. Tell him I know he's better than that. It was a lie. Vandenberg had been there, had told Elena the truth about Declan's last words. But sometimes the truth was a weapon too dangerous to use. Sometimes mercy required deception. Kincaid's face crumpled. Tears tracked down his weathered cheeks. Declan said that he did. He knew you were struggling. He wanted to help, but he got sick before he could. He spent his last days worrying about you, about the man who saved his life, about his brother. I wasn't his brother. Kincaid's voice was barely a whisper. If I was his brother, I would have accepted his help, would have swallowed my pride, would have stayed the man he thought I was. Elena took another step, close enough now to see the pain etched in every line of his face, close enough to see the mechanism of the dead man's switch. Spring tension, pressure plate, circuit wiring, everything her EOD training had taught her to recognize. You can still be that man, she said softly, the one who saved lives instead of taking them. Give me the switch, Chief. End this the right way. Dad would want you to end this the right way. For a long moment, Wade Kincaid stood at the top of those stairs, holding a bomb that could kill them both, wrestling with demons. Elena could only imagine. She saw the calculation in his eyes, the easy escape of death versus the hard road of accountability. His jaw clenched, his eyes closed, and when they opened again, something had changed. The rage was gone, replaced by exhausted acceptance. Declan would want me to face this, he whispered, not run from it. Then his hand opened. The switch fell in what felt like slow motion, tumbling through empty air, red button releasing, spring mechanism engaging, circuit beginning to close. Elena's training kicked in before conscious thought. Lunge, catch, secure. The metal was warm from his grip. The trigger mechanism crude but effective. One wrong move and they'd both be vapor. She held it steady, barely breathing. Every muscle locked in place. Until EOD specialists swarmed up the stairs, secured the device with gentle hands and professional competence, rendered it safe with wire cutters and technical expertise. Kincaid sank to his knees, hands behind his head, the fight gone out of him completely. I'm sorry, he whispered. Tell your father I'm sorry. Tell him yourself, Elena said softly. Wherever he is, I think he's listening. SWAT took Kincaid into custody, gentle despite his crimes, professional despite the rage some of them must have felt. Federal agents processed the scene, photographing, documenting, building cases that would send men to prison for decades. Elena descended the stairs on shaking legs, the adrenaline finally crashing. Her hands trembled. Her breathing came too fast, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her like physical force. Vandenberg appeared through the smoke, pulled her into a fierce hug. Don't you ever do that again? Chasing a bomber up the stairs? Jesus Christ, Elena. Dad would have done the same thing. I know. That's what terrifies me. Sullivan approached. Professional even now. We got everything. The weapons, the money, the key players. This network is dismantled. Rutledge Kincaid and 8 others are going away for a very long time. Jensen, Elena asked. Stable. You saved his life. He's already giving a statement. Volunteered to testify against Rutledge. In the ambulance, Jensen caught Elena's eye. He mouthed 2 words. Thank you. She nodded. Some people could be redeemed. Some people chose the harder right. What about Wolf? Elena asked. The specialist who backed away. Sullivan checked her notes. Specialist Marcus Wolf. Cooperating fully. He pulled security footage from his phone that shows he tried to stop Rutledge during the assault. He's getting immunity in exchange for testimony. And Kincaid's wife. His motivation for all this? Sullivan's expression softened. We reached out. She died 3 weeks ago, Elena. She'd been sick since 2015, the medical issues your father tried to help with. The VA actually approved her surgery 2 weeks before she died. Emergency authorization, after years of denials. But Wade never checked his mail. He was too consumed with rage at the system, too focused on his criminal operations. By the time he found out, she was already gone. Elena felt something inside her crack. He could have saved her. If he'd just checked his mail. If he'd just asked for help. Yes, the tragedy is that the system finally worked, but he'd already given up on it. The night stretched into morning. At 0400, Elena sat in the NCIS field office, exhausted but wired, giving her account for the 3rd time to federal prosecutors who would build cases from her testimony. Finally, at 0630, Sullivan released her. Go home. Sleep. We'll need you for depositions next week. But for now, you're done. The case is solid because of you. Vandenberg drove her home through the sunrise. Neither spoke until they reached her driveway. You know Kincaid will claim you lied, Vandenberg said quietly. About Declan's last words. I know. Did you lie? Elena thought about it. About truth and necessary fiction. About what her father would have said if he'd known his friend was suffering. About mercy and justice and the space between them. I told him what Dad would have wanted to say. She finally answered, That's close enough. Did your dad really say that about Wade, understanding his anger? No. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Dad's actual last words about Wade were different. He said, tell Wade he was always the better operator. I just got luckier, and tell him I'm sorry I couldn't help him when it mattered. Vandenberg was quiet for a long moment. So you gave Wade a different message? A lie. A kinder truth. Dad would have forgiven him if he'd known how far Wade had fallen. I just gave Wade permission to believe that. To choose life over death. Your father would be proud of that choice. And troubled by it, just like I am. Inside her house, Elena stood in front of her father's photograph for a long time. The sun was rising, golden light streaming through the windows. It's done, Dad, she said quietly. Rutledge is going away. Kincaid is going away. The weapons trafficking network is dismantled. And I'm okay. I'm still here. The photograph looked back with eternal calm. She thought about Jensen, wounded but alive because she'd acted. About the militia attacks that would never happen, about the 3 women Rutledge had hurt before, who would finally see consequences. Justice delayed, but not denied. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the conference room at Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters. Captain Cole, NCIS, Agent Sullivan, Lieutenant Sterling, and Captain Dutch Vandenberg surrounded her. Cole held a small box, opened it to reveal the Navy and Marine Corps medal. Bronze, prestigious, rare. Petty Officer Elena Ashford, for heroic achievement involving risk to life while serving as an undercover operative in a federal weapons trafficking investigation, and for valor in preventing a bombing that would have caused multiple casualties, it is my privilege to present you with this medal. The citation was read. Applause followed. But what Elena focused on was the small group watching from the gallery. 20 SEAL candidates, the ones she trained every morning, the ones who would carry forward everything she taught them. After the ceremony, Cole pulled her aside. I've received authorization to offer you a new position. Advanced hand-to-hand combat instructor. You'd be teaching the Ashford method to every SEAL candidate who comes through this facility. Your father's techniques, your innovations. The system that's kept our people alive for 30 years. It deserves to be formally recognized. And you're the best person to do it. Elena thought about intelligence work. About field operations. About the career she'd planned before Syria. Before the shrapnel that had ended one path and opened another. I accept, she said. 6 weeks later, On a Saturday morning, Elena stood on the training mat in the newly christened Ashford Combat Training Center. The dedication plaque bore her father's name and photograph. Beneath it, a quote, "Strength isn't measured by force. It's measured by how many you teach to stand." She was teaching advanced defensive tactics to 25 SEAL candidates. Among them were 3 women, struggling against the same skepticism Elena had faced, the same doubt, the same quiet dismissal. One candidate, Petty Officer Sarah Reeves, was paired with a male candidate who outweighed her by 80 pounds. He was holding back, being gentle, treating her like she might break. "Problem candidate," Elena asked. "Ma'am, I don't want to hurt her." "You won't. Reeves, demonstrate technique 17, full speed." Reeves executed perfectly, using leverage and timing to put her partner on the mat in 3 seconds. The male candidate looked shocked, embarrassed, enlightened. Elena helped him up. "What did you learn? That I underestimated her, ma'am?" "No. You learned that assumptions get you killed in combat. Respect everyone's capability. Gender doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. Training matters. Technique matters. Competence matters." She looked at Reeves. Again, this time he won't hold back. The male candidate attacked for real. Reeves defended, countered, controlled. Not perfectly, but competently, learning with every repetition. From the observation gallery, Vandenberg watched with quiet satisfaction. Beside him stood Cole and Senior Chief Anderson. "She's the best instructor we've had in 20 years, Anderson said. "She's her father's daughter," Vandenberg replied, "and she's just getting started." Elena's phone buzzed during a break. Message from Sullivan. "Rutledge sentenced today. 22 years federal prison. Kincaid got 15 years. Jensen testified, immunity granted. Justice served." Elena typed back, "Thank you for everything." 9 months later, Elena was running morning PT at Coronado. A new Ranger detachment arrived for joint training. Among them was a young female officer, Lieutenant Kira Brennan, 24 years old, nervous, being mocked by male teammates who thought her presence was political correctness run amok. "Hey, think you can keep up with real Rangers?" one of them called out. Elena overheard, approached. The male Rangers saw her instructor insignia and straightened slightly. Kira was tense. "Ma'am, I know what they think. I'm ready to prove myself. I've been working twice as hard." Elena cut her off gently. "You don't prove anything to them. You prove it to yourself. Then they either learn or they wash out. Those are the only 2 options." That afternoon, Elena ran the hand-to-hand demonstration, asked for a volunteer to demonstrate Technique 17. The loudest skeptic stepped forward with a smirk. "Lieutenant Brennan," Elena said, "please demonstrate." Kira executed perfectly. Leverage over strength. Timing over force. The male Ranger was on the mat in 4 seconds, looking up at the ceiling, trying to figure out what had just happened. The other Rangers were silent, staring, recalculating every assumption they'd made. Elena addressed the class. "That's Ashford method, developed by my father over 30 years, proven in combat from Grenada to Afghanistan. It doesn't care about your gender, your size, your attitude. It cares about your training, your commitment, your willingness to learn." "Anyone else want to test that theory?" Silence. After class, Kira approached. "Ma'am, thank you. Everyone told me to quit, that I'd never make it, that Rangers wasn't for women." Elena looked at her, saw herself at 24. Before Syria, before the shrapnel. When the world was full of men who thought they knew her limits better than she did. "My father taught me something important," Elena said. "The people who tell you to quit are usually the ones who quit on themselves first. Don't listen to them. Listen to this." She touched Kira's chest over her heart. "That voice that got you through basic, through Ranger school, through every person who said you couldn't. That's the only voice that matters. That's the voice that makes you a warrior. Everything else is just noise." Kira's eyes were wet. "Yes, ma'am. And Lieutenant, when they underestimate you, let them. My father always said underestimation is a weapon. Use it, then prove them wrong, every single time." Elena watched Kira walk away. Shoulders straighter, head higher, the weight of doubt replaced by the armor of purpose. That evening, Elena stood on the beach, watching the Pacific turn copper. Her phone rang. "Vandenberg. Saw you with that Ranger lieutenant today." She just needed to hear what Dad taught us. Declan would be proud. You're not just teaching techniques. You're building a culture where competence is the only currency that matters. That was always his dream. After they hung up, Elena walked to the water's edge, let the Pacific wash over her boots. She thought about the morning she'd first seen Travis Rutledge, the demonstration where she'd put him on the mat, the parking lot where he'd pulled a knife, the warehouse where justice had been delivered with precision and mercy. She thought about her father's hands teaching her techniques when she was 8 years old, about his voice, explaining leverage and pressure points, about his final days when cancer took his strength, but never his dignity. I finished it, Dad, she whispered to the sunset. The mission you started, the legacy you built, the belief that anyone can learn to stand. I'll keep teaching it, keep refining it, keep proving that you were right all along. The Pacific rolled eternal. The sun descended beyond the horizon, and Elena Ashford stood at the intersection of past and future, holding the line her father had drawn, making sure that line held firm for generations yet to come. Always finish what you start, no matter the cost. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. That was the promise she would keep until her last breath. The warrior's code her father had lived, and the one she would die defending.